Welcome to 5 Minutes of X, where 60 years ago, 5 awkward teens and one weird dream kicked off a mutant revolution. X-Men #1 was published in September of 1963. It was written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby. It's a comic so iconic it birthed a movie franchise, toy lines, multiple animated series, and too many comic series based on Wolverine to count. Let's start by highlighting Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. Early on, Bobby's powers are just kind of snow-themed. He throws snowballs, turns into a snowman, builds tiny ice structures. He's like the backup entertainment at a mutant birthday party. We are a long way from Bobby being considered an Omega-level mutant. He's also clearly the youngest, probably like around 13 or 14 in this early run of X books, which means he's got a lot of that little brother energy. He tells a lot of jokes, he's pouting, he gets frozen to the floor by his own teammates. Is he gay? Well, yes, but that comes much later. Much later. Right now, he's just cold, goofy, and barely in control of anything. As I mentioned, he is young. It makes sense that he's less interested in Jean Grey when she appears, based on his age at this point. I also want to talk about the first and greatest X-Men villain and hero, Magneto. He shows up in X-Men #1 fully formed, no tragic backstory, no origin story montage, just rolling into a military base and yelling at the humans like he's been waiting decades to do it. At this point, we don't know his real name. He's just Magneto, the evil mutant. Subtle. Later, we'll learn that his name is Eric Lenser or Max Eisenhardt or Magnus, depending on which retcon you're in. But what we do know is he's a mutant supremacist. He calls humans inferior. He has magnetic powers, which Stan Lee clearly interpreted as any power I need to move the plot forward. He bends missiles, forms force fields, and levitates himself. And while Xavier is off dreaming of peaceful coexistence with humans, Magneto has already given up on them and is in the mood to conquer them. Even in issue 1, he's got gravitas, the cape, the powers, the helmet. It's all awesome right off the bat. And even though he is like sort of the mustache twirling villain archetype in these early issues, he still really pops off the page. We're going to be seeing a lot more of him. I love him as a character, and I hope you do too. So here we are, issue #1. We open at the X Mansion. It's called Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Professor X gathers his 4 teenage students, Cyclops, Iceman, Beast, and Angel, and immediately jumps them through some training in the Danger Room. This will be where the X-Men train through a lot of the X-Men runs. Here, it's kind of a good way to show the reader that that everybody has powers and what those powers are. But this early version of the Danger Room is super lame. At this point, it's just kind of like jumping over mechanical arms and dodging laser chairs. Jean Grey's arrival is not subtle. Xavier practically introduces her like a contestant on The Bachelor, and the guys immediately start acting like they've never seen a girl before. Scott gets nervous, Hank gets poetic, Warren gets flirty, Bobby turns into an ice clown. Literally, it's awkward, and unfortunately pretty much defines Jean's role for these first dozen or so issues. She's the token girl, treated more like a plot device than a person. Spoiler alert, though, it takes time, but it does get better. Jean becomes very powerful, very self-empowered, and awesome later on. Meanwhile, Magneto takes over a military base for reasons, and the X-Men in full uniforms, riding in a literal Rolls Royce, roll up to stop him. Then there's a big showdown with some awkward teamwork. The boys trip over each other trying to impress Jean. Magneto leaves, everyone high fives, issue 1 complete. Weirdly, it appears that on Jean's first day in the school, she fights one of the X-Men's most powerful enemies. It's cheesy, it's wild, and it's the foundation of 60 years of chaos. There's a lot of filler here, lots of talk about the new girl, pages of silly jokes while changing outfits and things like that. We're seeing the Marvel method here, where Stan would give an outline and Kirby would draw the book without an actual script. Then Stan or other bullpen writers would come back through and add all the dialogue, matching it to the pages. Marvel really doesn't do this anymore, but in the early days, this was the only way that Stan Lee was writing like a dozen books over like a multiple year period. This has created a lot of padding, though, early on. The stories are far more loose due to this method, and it's sadly most to the detriment of the issue. Reading this issue now is like opening a time capsule from a time when superheroes explained their powers out loud mid-fight, and everyone wore matching uniforms for no reason. The storytelling is stiff, the pacing is awkward, Magneto talks like he's monologuing for a courtroom drama, but there's something here, that spark. You can totally see how this caught on. These characters aren't polished, but they're full of potential, and that tension between what they are now and what we know they'll become is what makes going back to issue 1 totally worth it. And that's it. That's all there is for X-Men #1. It's not a bad start, but it's also not the earth-shaking start that some of us think of it as. There's a lot of growth to be had here, but overall, this is a good issue, not a great one. And with that, you've survived another session in the Danger Room. Make sure you check out Jordy.com for character info on each issue of 5 Minutes of X. See you next time.